Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rediscovering Me podcast. It's your girl, Nikia P. Evans. Super excited that you're here because we are going to talk about some amazing things on today. Okay. So, on today, this episode is all about healing emotional trauma. Okay. Healing emotional trauma. And one thing that I could say is that a lot of people may not realize how deep emotional trauma can go. A lot of people don't even know what emotional trauma is. So today we're going to have that discussion. I have an amazing special guest with us today, Miss Marilyn Brooks. She's going to be here and she's going to talk to us on the topic of healing emotional trauma. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring Marilyn on and get her to there she goes. Hi, Marilyn. How are you, love?
Hi, I'm great. I'm feeling good. I am excited about this particular topic because it is so needed.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That it is. So, Marilyn, before we get into this topic, go ahead and tell our audience a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, well, I am Marilyn Brooks. I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. I am a former school teacher. I taught school for 34 years, and within that time span, I was a curriculum facilitator for also 6 years for grades K through 6. And what all that means that you have to know the curriculum like the back of your hand. Also, I am a metaphysician. And what that means is this: I look at the human anatomy, the human body, from an esoteric point of view. I'm like the person that takes the light and shine it on the inside to be able to look on the inside and make determinations as far as what's happening to a person emotionally, because our emotions speak to us through our behavior. Also, I am called to be a healer. And what that means is this: I can walk no further, I can help people no further than I've walked. So, as a healer, as I am healing myself, I help other people to heal. I've written 3 books. First book I wrote was Come Out of Your Cocoon. The second book I wrote actually was a comic book, Essence and the Return of the Guardians, and a book that I'm writing now currently, and it should be out by the end of the fall, right around September, October, Finding You Inside of You. So to summarize, who is Marilyn Brooks as it's evolved? I am one that helps others who is ready to walk through their healing journey and to live the life that they were created and destined to live.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. All right, Marilyn. So, we're talking about healing emotional trauma. Okay. And a lot of people do not understand what that is. So, can you tell us what is emotional trauma?
Okay. Well, first of all, when you're looking at emotional trauma, you're looking at the word emotions. Our body is filled with all types of emotions that we encounter. Okay. And those emotions, if they're not released and transferred, they get what you call stuck inside of our body. So when you're looking at what is emotional trauma, is emotions that are stuck inside of our body. It's energy that needs to be released. And the trauma part comes in is this: a lot of people think that trauma has to do with like the macro traumas, like for example COVID, that was traumatizing on a global scale. But emotional trauma deals with the little foxes, those little hidden emotions, those little hidden things that we go through, that happen in our life that is not really talked about. So when you're asking the question, what is emotional trauma? Emotional traumas are things that happen in our life that actually has the ability and the power to shut down our entire nervous system, okay? And it causes us to be debilitated. We can't sleep, we overeat or we undereat, or we take on all these different types of behaviors because our emotions within our body is out of alignment. So
Mm.
that is emotional trauma.
Okay. Now, Marilyn, for you, as far as teaching about trauma and healing for trauma, can I ask you what inspired you to get into that?
Okay, that's a good question. What inspired me to really get into emotional trauma or trauma, period, is that I had my birth chart done several years ago. Okay. And when I began to look at that, it helped me to understand some of the things that I was going through in my adult life. For example, childhood traumas. So when I began to look at my birth chart, and when I began to look at some of the behaviors that I was carrying in my adulthood, I had to what you call sit with yourself, and I asked myself, why am I doing certain behaviors that I don't like, that is really not me. So looking back into my childhood and things that happened in my childhood, I couldn't remember everything, but there are certain things that you can remember from your childhood. These were childhood wounds that I was carrying into my adulthood. And then I had two really traumatic traumas that I consider that happened in my life. One was a very bad car wreck that I had. Thankfully, that I'm still alive. And another trauma that I experienced had to do with a person. And I looked at that and I said, okay, why am I choosing something that I know that I don't like? Why am I choosing somebody that I know that is not someone, if you will, on my same energy or frequency? Why am I choosing certain behaviors that I know that is not me? Well, I had to look at, okay, what is happening in my personal life? And so I began to take a deep dive within myself and ask myself certain questions. And I found out that I was dealing with a lot of abandonment issues. I was dealing with a lot of lack of self love and lack of self esteem. And I had a lot of insecurities. And these things I did not realize that I had until I began to sit within myself. And then I had to ask myself, why do I have these emotions, and why are these emotions sabotaging my entire life? And so that led me to doing my research on trauma. And when I did my research on trauma, I'm like, and I'll show you this little what I like to use. I don't know if you can see it. It's just a visual of a iceberg. And when I found myself up under the iceberg and all of these things that I had hidden, and I didn't know that I had hidden these things, and I realized that on top of the iceberg, there's a metaphor. The top of the iceberg, I never dealt with wounds and hurts and past experiences. What I was doing was living on top of the iceberg, which is called coping strategies, denials, adapting, a person pleaser. So I looked at my life and I asked myself questions about why am I this way? Why am I responding this way? And I realized that my emotions were stuck inside of myself due to childhood wounds, childhood pains, and also wounds and pains that I was dealing with in my adulthood that I had no idea that this was causing my life not to be the life that I was really wanting it to be.
Mhm. That's powerful. And I love the way that you broke it down and how you said that you had to ask yourself those questions and sit with yourself. And I think that's so important because we do not realize that that's how we get the answers to what we really need within us. We have to learn how to sit with ourselves. We have to be accountable and honest with ourselves to be able to change those things. So, Marilyn, when you did that and you started looking into trauma and you started working on yourself, now you're dealing into an area where you are helping others heal. So, when you encounter someone who comes to you that is dealing with emotional trauma, what type of steps or what do you try to tell them to help them to heal from that emotional trauma?
Well, let me answer it, started it out like this. A lot of times when I meet people, just in general, a lot of times we see in others that we see in ourselves. Okay. And that's how we see it, because I am you and you are me. And some of the same things that you may not be dealing with, um, my intuition, my divinity, my divine self, has become so keen now that I can, it's like I'm a light. It's just like a person with an x-ray. It's like I'm an x-ray machine, without you going through the process, because I can see. And my discernment is, because I'm an empath, right? I can feel it. And so
Right.
when people come to me, asking me, questions about, okay, how did you heal yourself and how are you healing yourself? The first thing that I say to them, that you have to realize this, that when you start looking within yourself and shining the light within yourself, it's not always going to be a pretty picture, because you're going to find things, like I like to put it this way, you're going to find the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if
Yeah.
you can take what you see within yourself and not judge it, and be able to forgive yourself along the way. And that's another thing, that's hard for a lot of people when I'm talking to people, because of the shame. It's like I should have knew. And I used to say that to myself. I should have knew better. I should not have done that. So when I'm talking to people, the first thing I, walk them through is what you're gonna find when you go inside of yourself. And it's two things that you've got to remember: let go of the shame,
Mhm.
and let go of the judging yourself, and to forgive yourself. Because that's a place where people can get stuck, because I did myself, got stuck in, oh, you feel so ashamed, you feel so unworthy, you feel so bad. And then you walk in this, real strong, of judging yourself and not forgiving yourself.
Absolutely. And I totally understand that because I've been there as well. And healing and looking within yourself is not an easy thing. It's not easy at all. Getting to that place of self-forgiveness, getting to that place of not judging yourself, not criticizing yourself, or completely just not shutting down. Because I've been there,
Right.
looking within myself and like, yeah, I don't like this, girl. We should have known better. We should have did better. We could have did X, Y, and Z instead of doing this. And we be so hard on ourselves so much. And I truly understand that. Now, when you say let go of the shame and forgive yourself, like how do you coach and teach people of how to do that?
Well, there are several steps. Okay. First, you have to recognize what is happening, or what has happened to you. Okay. And then you have to walk in, I walk them through forgiveness, like I said before, because that's a huge, huge, huge hurdle right there. Okay. I accept, what has happened to me, because with trauma, you can't help what happened to you. It is something that happened to you. Okay. And so you have to accept the fact of that, and then not feel ashamed about what happened to you, because you'd be surprised things that have happened to us in our life, that we don't talk about, because our society, and some of it is very cultural, especially in our culture, whereas you don't talk about it, you don't tell anybody about it. So I walk them through, the part of accepting what has happened to them, and don't judge yourself. Let go of the shame. Forgive yourself. And that takes time for those, three components to, take its place. And then when I move a person into, now I'm accepting what has happened. And this is the big one right here that you can get stuck in. And I walk people through. It's the grieving process. And it's like the death of a thing, you know, something is over. And a lot of traumas happen in relationships between people, whether it's a relationship with a partner or a relationship with a child, moving on, you know, leaving the nest. Okay, grieve that. And I tell people, feel what you feel. Don't deny what you feel. Feel what you are feeling going through, because that's the grieving process. It is a death. It is something that you are detaching from. You're detaching from a belief. You're detaching from, um, um, you know, when you're looking at the brain, that dopamine. You're detaching from that feeling or getting that hit. And you know, anytime that you are addicted to something, because people can be addicted to traumas. You know, you're addicted to feeling that way. You're addicted to feeling bad. You're addicted to verbal or emotional abuse. And so when you're looking at the brain and how the brain works, when that brain is not getting that dopamine, it is like a person that's addicted, because now you're going through that withdrawal process. Okay. And so grieve, feel what you feel, grieve that. And that's a process too, and that is not an overnight journey, because you have your psyche has been accustomed to something, because it's embedded in your subconscious mind, called the memory. And then lastly, you let it go. And that's a tough one too, because you're letting go of something that you have become accustomed to. But all of these steps, which takes time, that I walk people through, you can make it if you can take it. That's another thing I say too. You can make it if you can take it. And the last chord is, you're letting it go. You're letting it go. It's like you buried it, covered it up, you let it go, it's gone. And then you put something else in its place. You put something positive in its place. You can use, I have people to use affirmations. I am greater than what I experience. I am greater than what I'm going to experience in the future, because you don't always know. But I use these affirmations about, I am powerful. I am greater than what I experienced. I am greater than what I experienced in the past, because it no longer serves me. So I do a lot of affirmations, and that's building up a person's self-esteem, building up a person's self-worth, and it's also looking ahead, because the past is the past. So it's the letting go is the final stage.
Powerful, powerful. Now, you spoke earlier on how trauma, emotional trauma, whatever type of trauma can have effects on the body. Can you tell us a little bit more of how, when we keep those emotions in, how that affects our body?
Okay, well, like I said, when trauma hits the body, and it hits your entire nervous system, it sends your body into shock. And how that works is this: you start to forget things. Your behavior changes, whereas you're not motivated. You become very irritable. You become where you don't want to do anything. You sleep. And like I said, some people, they will overeat or they will undereat. You don't want to be around anybody. And another thing that happens, how this affects the body, because body, mind, and spirit, whereas a person disassociates themselves with other people. And the key thing about this is that these are those coping strategies that I was talking about, that's on top of the iceberg. A lot of these things we hide from other people. And a lot of times people don't know that we are going through these things. We begin to suffer in silence. And so those are just some of the examples that a person does, because of your entire nervous system, your brain has been attacked. If you look at it that way, your brain has been attacked. Your body has been attacked. And so your body begins to react and do certain things. Sometimes people don't even go to work. Sometimes people avoid their families. Your whole system is out of sorts because you're out of alignment, because your nervous system is out of alignment. And then some people actually do get sick. Some people actually do get sick. And if these things, these emotions within our body are not healed, and if they're not caught in time, it can turn into heart disease. Because what happens is when your body's in stress, because your body's not at rest, and the body begins to have panic attacks. Because I used to have panic attacks. I never had that in my entire life. And when you have a panic attack, it feels like you are actually having a heart attack. But that's because the stress of the trauma of thinking about what happened, and then the shame and all those other emotions that get trapped inside of the body, if it's not identified, if it's not healed, it causes sickness, and then it causes other serious illnesses. If we carry these things as far as unforgiveness and bitterness in our hearts or within ourselves for many, many years, and it leads to heart disease, diabetes, swelling in the body, things of that nature. So if we don't get the healing that we need and we don't recognize it or work with someone, a therapist or a psychologist or someone who has done this work, then what we do, we suffer in silence, and it leads to illnesses.
Wow. Wow. And see, and that's what I was saying before. A lot of people do not know the effects of trauma and how deep it can actually go. And like you said before, in our community, we've been taught, you don't talk about this, you don't go and share business, which is why sometimes it's hard for our community to go out and seek the help that we need, to go and look for therapy, to do those things. So Marilyn, now that you shared, the effects of emotional trauma, how to heal from it, and the processes that you take someone through, what encouragement can you give to someone who's watching right now if they feel like they are suffering in silence and kind of scared to actually take those steps? What would you be able to say to them?
I would say to them that you're not the only one. You're not the only one that has had traumas that happen in your life.
Right.
It happens to all of us. So don't be afraid to seek out help. Because when you don't seek out help, what it does, it just gets worse. So I would say to anyone that's listening, don't be afraid to seek out help, to help yourself to heal. And don't be afraid and feel ashamed, because you're not the only one. And I would say to a person who's listening, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself, because we came here to experience life. And someone may say, well, I didn't come here to experience that. No, we didn't. But your experience doesn't have to be your destiny. So the last thing I would say to a person is this. This is just something that happened to you and through you, but it's not your destiny. That now you have the choice to choose to heal yourself and to have the life that you imagined in your mind, that you already saw about your life. So choose to be free.
And that choice is a big one. And like you said, we can make it if we can take it. We can make it if we can take it. So I absolutely love that. Now, Marilyn, would you like to share the services and things that you provide if someone would like to come to you and speak to you concerning any type of trauma or healing?
Yes. And can I throw this part in there too, if you will? um, in answering that, what you just asked, I do a lot of shadow work. And that's really important. And shadow work is just really, it's very simple as this. It's these parts of ourselves that's behind us. It's like a shadow that we don't want to tell anybody, that we don't want to share. And it's that part of us, that part of the ego that wants to be in control. And I use myself very briefly. I had to look at my shadow self, and especially with my insecurities when I was dealing with my traumas. I had to ask myself, and I like to talk like that because I'm doing my self talk. Because when you go inside of you, you are doing your self talk. So I do a lot of shadow work, whereas to thine own self be true. It's where you are being truthful with yourself. And that's the part where we ask ourselves, what part did I play in remaining traumatized? What part did I play into this? And that could be saying yes when I should have said no. So I do a lot of shadow work. So when people come to me, I do, first of all, I do an assessment to see where the person is at. And you can always tell, I can, because I use a wheel. I look at your emotions and I ask certain questions about yourself. So I look at your emotions, and then your emotions is always a telltale sign to me is your belief system, as far as what you have believed about yourself, or what you have allowed people to tell you about yourself that you believe. And then I move into the shadow work, because that's very important. And that takes us back to our childhood. Because when I was growing up, I dealt a lot with insecurities, being abandoned, and being left out. And I remember that very specifically when I did my own work on my own self, that this started as far back as I can remember when I was in the 5th grade. That things that I was told by teachers, and it's funny that I ended up being a school teacher, right? But that I was told by teachers, some of the young people in my community, and even in high school, things that I was told. So when I deal with the shadow work with people, um, um, a light bulb comes on, because it jars the memory of what has been hidden in the subconscious mind. Because what's in the subconscious mind, we still play that out in our life without even realizing it. So yeah.
Okay. And shadow work is amazing. I did a video on shadow work once, and taking audio and tried to make a little fun of it, a little light of it, because shadow work is not an easy thing to do sometimes. It's definitely not easy. But it's definitely rewarding to be able to sit and be honest with
Yeah.
yourself, be accountable. So I think that's amazing. Marilyn, I want to say thank you for coming and sharing your information and your knowledge with us. Now, if someone wanted to contact you, to speak with you or to work with you, how could they do that?
Okay, they can contact me. I will leave my email address. Is there any way I can leave it in the chat?
Yes, ma'am, or you can say it. We will post it on.
Okay. Okay. All these are lower caps. E as in elephant. W, W, A as in apple, P as in Paul, dot mg at gmail.com.
All right. And so that is your contact. And what about if they would like to follow you on social media?
Okay, they can follow me on Instagram, and on Instagram and Facebook, and also TikTok. I'm Essence Evolve. So they could follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And also, I have a podcast, and the podcast is Essence Evolve, Finding You Inside of You.
Finding you inside of you. That is awesome. And what days do your episodes load for your podcast?
Every Tuesday, no, take that back. Every Thursday
Mhm.
at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay. All right, awesome. So everyone, make sure to follow Marilyn Brooks, also known as Essence Evolve on social media, and make sure that you connect with her in her podcast, Finding You Inside of You, which is on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Marilyn, I want to say thank you so much for giving us this knowledge on emotional trauma because, like we said earlier, this is important. This is a topic that many people don't discuss. Many people don't even know what emotional trauma is, but thanks to you, now we can share the word and they can know more about emotional trauma and how to heal from that. So, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your knowledge, and I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. So everyone else who's listening, listen, thank you so much for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated. Make sure that you follow us every Thursday. Okay. Every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our episodes go live. Okay. On Rediscovering Me podcast. I appreciate y'all. Again, it's your girl, Nakia P. Have a great one, and we'll see you next time.